No, I can. No, I can. How you doing, Jolyn?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It would be interesting though, because guess what?
What?
This tea is good and we're live.
You trying to cheer me up? Totally. Can't even do it. So what's up, Mark?
How are you?
Good. I've been trying to get my notes together.
Well, we have a face that we haven't seen in quite some time now.
Ooh.
Shout outs to brother Vic.
Vic? What?
Yes.
Did he graduate?
Yes. So shout outs to you, Vic. It's kind of interesting that that you're the first person today in this chat because we salute you today, along with many of the other graduates that are also come up cousins that have finished their matriculation at whatever illustrious university that you have attended. So shout outs to you, Vic, because I think he just graduated from Randolph-Macon University. And then on top of that, shout out to Rashid, also one of our other fellow cousins. And if you have also graduated from a university, and on top of that, you put that work in, go ahead and throw that up in the chat. And on top of that, go ahead and let us know where you're coming from. I see that y'all have tried to spell the come up in the chat. I see it. So much so that I see that Ross Smith, as well as I think Sharon Davis, have tried to literally formulate it together. Mm-hmm. We just need the come up cousins to come in there. And I'm probably sure that you guys could just literally plot it together and we can, we're going to get this. We're going to get this. But, what's up, everybody? I'm Mark Monroe, accompanied by my wonderful co-host and co-producer, good friend, and on top of that, Galactic Catalyst, the wonderful
Jolyn GC in the place to be. What's good?
Everything except for, some of the flatness that we saw in the market. But, I mean, hey, new quarter, new me.
Okay.
So we're here. By the way, I like the shirt. 99 problems, but investing ain't one. Yes.
Shout out to Matt Reese.
Shout out to Matt Reese. That was the original merch of the Come Up series. So, you never know. I may actually just autograph mine and then donate it off to someone. Or
I'm keeping mine. I rock this all the time. So.
Oh, word? Yep. I do too. But, today I'm a little bit more, I don't know what to call it.
Well, I'm the casual one today.
I know, right? Because it was a flip side on Tuesday.
Say that again?
It was a flip side on Tuesday. I was the casual one, and then you were pretty much the 90s vibe. So,
but I still got a little bit of it today. Today, I just keeping it, keeping it calm.
Okay. And what they say on the West Coast? Well, all right.
Well, alrighty. Where are people coming from?
So we got people coming in from Trinidad and Tobago. Let's see. We have
to the bone. What's up?
Claxton, Georgia, still here. Whatever happened to our cousin that from the Midwest, from coming from St. Louis? Because I used to love doing the phrase. But you know what? Shout outs to you, Sharon, for, hey, it's an honor to be legendary for each and every single one of you. And she said to the original First Lady of Leisure, totally. So she gave a shout out. Let's see here. We got Riverside in the building. Of course, we got some Atlanta folks in here. They're going hard for the Hawks. I guess they play tonight. We got Ghana in the building. And we saw that posting in from Ghana where they actually showed their laptop, while watching the Come Up series. We see you. All right. And let's see here. Of course, we got the DMV in the building, New Jersey, where we got St. Lucia, San Bernardino, California, London. We see you. This tea is hot. So we got Eastlake, Seattle, Rochester, New York, Baton Rouge City. Okay. All right. So we got Bronzeville, Chicago.
I saw Detroit.
We got Detroit. We got Fort Sam, Houston, Texas. Okay, we see you, H-Town. Let's see here. We got Philly. We got Zimbabwe. We got Memphis. I mean, y'all coming in. Oh, we also got something. Yo, took the words out of my mouth. Shout out to you, Johnny, all the way from Ethiopia. Let's go. Grambling, Louisiana. Oh, we got people up in here.
What up?
We got somebody in here from Guyana. Okay. Okay. All right.
Flint, Michigan. Okay.
Okay.
North Hollywood. Okay.
Well, look at y'all.
C-Tac. What's up, C-Tac?
Hey.
That's funny.
And then we also got Sacktown, so we're gonna give it to him. We got somebody coming in from the Philippines. I'm probably sure that Steve would be happy. Durham, Nashville.
Okay.
Oh, we are out here tonight. Be more in the building. All right, so we see that y'all are coming in from all over. You know the vibes, just like Malik just said. So, shout outs to each and every single one of you for just allowing us to grace your screens, your phones, whatever it may be, wherever you are, just for an hour, just to give you some good information and some good knowledge, as well as some lessons here and there, and maybe a couple of gems here and there as well. So, but let's get some things out of the way. If you're new to the show, if you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. I think it's definitely over here. It's definitely over here. Right and then on top of that, if you hit the like button, you can hit it right there close. I think it's right up above the subscribe button. And then on top of that, if you want to be in the know for when we drop new content, because Dr. Mark, after, the whole Amazon showing up at his office like he was out of the Matrix, had to get his office, had to burn some sage up in there. But ultimately coming back through. And also I want to send a special shout out to Che and his wife, Bria. Congratulations for, bringing another wonderful, beautiful girl into the world.
Hey.
Hey, one of our come up nieces in the making. So here we go. All right. So Jolyn.
Yes. What does your cousin?
We talk about this market
and the place to be. And this is Hot Take Thursday. Let's get into what this market was doing or whatever. We got the Dow coming in at 131.02 points. S&P 500 was 22.44 points. The NASDAQ was 18.42 points. And the VIX dropped it low for 15.48 points. And this time, I did look up the 10-year Treasury in time. And yeah, I'm on it. And it is 1.46%. Now, for sector performance, as y'all know, there are 11 sectors. We track the top 3 and the bottom 3 so we could see what that rotation is looking like, especially when it is a new quarter, new me, and new you. So we have energy, utilities, and health coming in. The top 3, the bottom 3, real estate, technology, and consumer staples. Y'all, this is really interesting that is how we're kicking off July, but stay tuned. Now for pick performance, we have, you can find our picks on our Instagram page at That Come Up Series, and you just scroll through, you'll find the post with all of our top picks. There's about 37 of them. Today, coming in the top 3, we got Nike with a 52-week high, holding strong after earnings in that $20+ run up, holding strong and then went a little higher. That's awesome. FTNT, number 2, and then MasterCard, number 3. Then for our bottom 3, we have CRISPR, C-Web, and Roku. And Roku has been in the news lately. We'll get in a little bit about that. And so has CRISPR, actually. So for the 52-week highs, we have NVIDIA, Target, and Microsoft. Microsoft, has been, it's been doing its thing. I was telling somebody, who was I talking to? Oh, I was talking to Tayo on Twitter, and I was telling him how, to me, Microsoft is like an old grandpa, and, he gets up, and when he gets up, you got to celebrate. You got to celebrate that he got up, because he may sit back down for a little bit, but he'll get back up. But he will sit down. So that's what you see with Microsoft right now. Because it was like 269, and then it was 270, then 271, and then it sat back down, and then it got back up. So, kudos to Microsoft for getting on up there. And yes, I agree with
I just want to say,
Microsoft is a sleeper. What'd you say?
I just want to say to Saint, if you're in the room, I didn't say it.
Said it. That is how I feel about Microsoft. No shade. I make money with Microsoft, no shade. I'm just saying, that is what I have observed as I've watched it over the years. Okay, so Mark, we have Hot Take Thursday. As you know, we like to cover this news and see what's going on. And the cousins responded to a story that I posted on my Instagram, and they have some questions. Now, the questions you can probably tell like what the main themes are going to be just because of what's going on in the market. So we'll definitely get into some US China trade stuff, trade war talk. There's some other things in the market. That's all I'm going to say. Are you ready? As you sip your tea, you're ready?
Forever ready.
Okay. Now, what I find hilarious is some people don't write questions. They just want to say something. So shout out, and you all know who you are. Shout out to you and your hilarious messages. Okay, here we go.
Can I send a shout out?
Yes.
Shout outs to Volvo and Porsche.
Okay, here we go already with the Thursday shade. Okay, so first topic. This is in tech. All right, so there's a cousin out there who would like to discuss Apple buying a place on the Roku remote. What is Apple's plan behind that? Oh, Lord, the dramatics.
Look, this is good for Apple because of the fact that, one, it's like you just show up on another platform. I remember having this conversation with a few folks just yesterday about it when we saw that Roku had spiked by 3%. Mm-hmm. And then I also said that don't be surprised that as much as we saw that Roku had spiked, it's going to come right back down because this really isn't news. We see Apple showing up on Samsung TVs, LG TVs, and essentially it's just going to happen. That's just the nature of the beast of showing up on streaming platforms. Now, it would really make me hoorah if we were hearing news that Roku's platform or Roku's streaming service, oh wait, they don't have that. They're just a device where a lot of these other streaming services are housed on. So of course you would see Apple TV Plus hosted on a Roku device. Now, the fact that people are saying, well, they had to admit that, that they need Roku. No, they just realize that that's untapped revenue potential that they can actually go for. And ultimately that people would, if they use Roku devices, then they have access to seeing that there's an Apple TV button. What is this? I'm more inclined to possibly sign up for the services. So, does Apple really need Roku? No, not exactly, because Roku sells out of most of the non-premier TV devices. And then, of course, they have their own device. So it's not really very much of a big deal for Apple, especially when they have their own device, their own ecosystem and everything else with over 1 billion users in there. So, honestly, shout outs to Roku for bringing on, say, for example, Apple. I'm not going to just completely shoot you down. But, let's just be real. This is more so a come up for Roku, not really a significant come up for Apple.
And we definitely saw that bear out in the significant drop that Roku had today. Because they were up by over 451 points and then just dropped. And they kept dropping.
Indeed.
So, interesting. Okay, so...
come out tomorrow. Remember, new quarter, new me. It's a new season.
Let's see what happens. Okay, up next. Let's keep it in that vein with Apple. Well, not necessarily Apple, but just in that vein of technology. All right, so we have a couple of questions about your favorite, AMD. So the question is, does China's approval for AMD acquisition matter? Yeesh.
To a certain degree, yes. Honestly, it's like, it's kind of funny that we're waiting on one of the most dramatic countries, which is China, in this whole political theater. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I don't think that it's going to have that much of a grave impact. This deal will close one way or another. And ultimately, normally when you see an acquisition deal take place, it's typically about 12 to 18 months for the deal to go through, especially for publicly traded companies. It's never just completely final. It literally has to go through board approval. And then on top of that, depending on what they do, if they're working through multinational or multi-countries, then ultimately then they have to go through those to get approval for regulatory and antitrust. And then it's like after we go through antitrust, then pretty much the deal is able to signal and go through. So China is pretty much the final one, probably because they take a little bit more time. But for the most part, it's not going to stop the show. I expect that AMD will probably be making some announcements. If not this month, we will probably see it happen before probably September or by late September.
Why would you say that before late September?
Because if you think about it, it still follows a timeline track of the 12 to 18 months. They announced the acquisition offer in October of last year. So if you just kind of like move it along the track, we just made it through the final part. Yeah, I mean, when we made it through that final part, it's like pretty much it's just China. Like normally China is the last country that normally goes through as it pertains to antitrust regulatory issues. And I don't think that China is going to stop this deal because of the fact that there's so much opportunity and upside for China in doing this deal. When you think about a lot of this data infrastructure that is set up, and then on top of that, it's vehicles like, for example, Li Auto, Xpeng, and NIO. I mean, this is a great opportunity for them, let alone, say, for example, data center technology and cloud infrastructure with Alibaba, which AMD does a lot of business with. So honestly, I don't see this stopping AMD in its tracks. Now, NVIDIA, on the other hand, that could be something different. But even then, I think that deal will still run through. When you have majority of the countries that have literally come on board, it's like nobody's just going to stop for China.
Okay. So there you have it on that. I'm getting into some, antitrust and court stuff and hating on, big tech and stuff like that. Here's a question from my cousin. What does the Facebook court dismissal mean for the rest of big tech? We kind of talked about this a little earlier, but
we did. So the thing with Facebook and I think that this creates an opportunity for, Facebook, I mean, they just moonwalked right out of court. And I think that this could set precedent for Google in the same manner as it pertains to Amazon. I don't know about that one because the FTC chair is pretty gung-ho about gunning for Amazon. I don't think that this is even going to impact a company like Apple. So I think that honestly, it's like the real big one here is to look at Amazon. And I think that what we'll see like altogether, a lot of companies didn't rally behind Facebook because Facebook is just hated, not only just amongst other companies, but also around other consumers. Amazon, on the other hand, is loved by consumers and is also pretty much, some companies love-hate relationship, but for the most part does good by most of the other companies in Fortune 500. So I would probably see that companies would probably rally around an Amazon. And I think that that's kind of like the first warning shot that like Amazon threw out, which was asking that the FTC chair literally recuse herself from the case, given that she's been very, very vocal in a lot of her biases. I mean, a lot of folks will say, well, she brings up a lot of great issues. To a certain degree, yes. But when you become so vocal and so one-sided, and then at the same token, it's like you've kind of like challenged the company in the eyes of public opinion, then really how is it possible for them to really have a fair case? So.
Okay.
They can run and tell that.
What did you say?
I said they can run tell that.
All right. All right. I guess that kind of answers the question of how are we going to compete with China if we break up our big tech?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Honestly, we're already behind China when it comes to tech, and here's the reason why. And I may get a little bit passionate on this one, so if you want to skip this one to come back to, or I can just take it on if you want me to just take it away.
Let's do this one at the end. So
okay.
You can just feel free to remind me to come back to that.
All right.
Big tech breakup. All right. I'm making a note and I'm highlighting it on my handy dandy iPad Pro. All right, here we go. All right, we have some. Oh, here's a question for you. What number are you predicting for Tesla deliveries?
Oh, so my base case is at 204. My bullish case is at 216, 217, and that's 100,000 vehicles delivered. Though that I really care about, I care more about like how many vehicles were produced. Mm-hmm. So how many vehicles in production? Because remember, that's every Tesla that's made. It's pretty much made to order, mm-hmm. versus other legacy auto manufacturers just making, and then going through their network of dealerships And we really don't know exactly how many do they really sell, because technically they sold out of all of them by handing them over to dealerships, but that's a whole nother story.
Okay. So keeping in vein with Tesla, I remember some time ago in The Matrix, Che was talking about Tesla in China. I wonder if Che remembers that. But anyway, so now there's news about Tesla entering the Indian market. Or I'm sorry, I meant to say in India. I think I may have said China, in India. So this cousin wants to know, what are your thoughts on Tesla entering Indian market, and what should we be looking for?
That's huge. I mean, because when you think about, like, that's one of the software engineering capitals of the world. I mean, you got India, then you got Ukraine, and then you got a few other places in which that they're known for just software developers, and so some of the most like just super software engineers that come out of those areas. So coming out of India, I can only suspect that essentially that we're thinking about not only just, vehicles, but we're also thinking about significant energy push. Mm-hmm. We're also looking at significance of AI dojo that goes through. So essentially you can have folks that literally work on that type of technology more up close and personal. And on top of that, it's like you don't have to pay that much. So you bring down your costs as it pertains to like literally working on such things. So, I mean, honestly, there's also the restaurant side in which that they can bring there. There's a whole lot of opportunities outside of just dealership, Tesla dealership and Tesla manufacturing, though that I could see those in there as well. But more so in the sense of energy, because we all know that India has been significantly trying to work on its infrastructure for more sustainable energy. And also working on a lot of the pollution that's there. And just really just like, for example, water, HVAC, just electricity, so that way you don't have to deal with like things like rolling blackouts and stuff like that. So I think that honestly, this is a good deal for Tesla. I think that honestly, it's a long road coming, because I'm probably sure that they have a strong fan base of Tesla in India. So I think that this is going to be dope.
Okay. Oh, this is a question. This is a question. I'm going to change it a little bit, but the base question is Apple to 150 before January. Basically, I'm going to change that question to ask what catalyst would propel Apple to hit that 150 price target, and or what where should the cousins be looking to formulate their own thesis on a question like this?
Well, the thing is that a lot of folks are believing that Apple's product releases are getting a little bit stale. So it's really going to come down to what they release. Also, the fact of what those AirTags revenue looks like up for the first quarter. I think that's coming up. We'll actually know what that revenue looks like, just to see exactly how much upside opportunity there is. I think that honestly, when looking at Apple, I mean, this is going to be kind of like a no-brainer. The fact that that it doesn't really require so much of a catalyst, because of the fact that one, it's number one of the S&P 500. And also the fact that honestly, it's one of the most stable tech companies that's out there. So if essentially you start getting spooked from some of the other big tech that's going through antitrust, you can turn directly over to Apple, and really there's no issue there. It's essentially a safe company. It's one of the most trusted. And then on top of that, it's like you're just now talking about like a company that has a real estate through their app store. And then on top of that, through their devices, which literally builds an entire ecosystem to open up more services. And we see that the services revenue continues to grow. So honestly, you're just looking at a cash cow and seeing exactly how big can it get. I mean, that's really going to justify everything for Apple. But honestly, Apple's like the type of company you just leave it alone and let it do its thing. Now, to a certain degree, people want more innovation from Apple. So I think that could be the one thing that could ultimately kind of give it some setbacks, where people say that the investment opportunity outside of cash, it makes the investment a little bit stale, because there's nothing really significant innovative from the average person's perspective.
Okay. Never mind. That's more of a Trade Talk Thursday questions, or Trade Talk. Why do I always do that? Trade Talk Tuesday question. We'll get, if there's time, we'll get into that question. But all right, moving on. All right, unemployment benefits running out, and historically a dip in September. Should we expect a severe correction like last September? And this is also in conjunction with another question from another cousin asking, why does it seem like they're always talking about an upcoming crash?
Because it sells ad revenue.
Say that again, because you kind of, the timing was off on my end. I couldn't hear that.
I said because it sells ad revenue.
Okay, so there you go for that. But what about September?
September is typically a time in which that you could see a correction or a slight pullback. I mean, historically, that's around the time in which that investment's kind of like it's pretty much like the same thing like a June. It's the end of a quarter going into the next one. So there's a rebalancing period going into the next 6 months. I mean, most of your institutional money will invest things over a 6-month period. And then essentially they typically look to rebalance around that time. Hence the reason why June 30th. Then what do we see? Through really starting from May 12th all the way up to June 30th, or really today, we saw a rebalancing effect that was taking place across the entire portfolio line. And I would suspect to say that September is probably one of those other ones where essentially it's like if you didn't do anything during this time period of 6 months, then you go to the next phase, which is about 9 months, and essentially that's pretty much the longer part of the target. In which that if you haven't rotated or rebalanced in 6 months, you do it in 9. I think that, a lot of folks get spooked by that, but I think that the biggest thing that you need to start looking at it as opportunity to step in. You need to start looking at it as it pertains to opportunity in which that, hey, these things have run. Now it's more so a rebalancing effect of looking at what you could see coming down the next 6 months, which would place you in, I think, March. How is it that your portfolio can ultimately grow from there? So I think that, we get so caught up into the media circus of it because of the fact that they pump it up so much. And it's like I told everybody from day one, Wall Street, they are some of the best marketers. Think about it. They don't have to sell you a car. They just sell you a dream or they sell you fear. And ultimately people eat that stuff up and it just is what it is. So I would say, really think about September, October as buying opportunities for the average retail investor. So if you're looking at stepping in, or if you're looking at rebalancing your portfolio or rotating out of something, it's a great time.
Okay. Let's see what we got here. A cousin wants to know, can you explain how buy the rumor, sell the news correlates on Wall Street and short-term trading?
Yeah. So for example, a lot of folks, sometimes they get a whisper from Wall Street where it's like, okay, hey, we're picking up coverage here, or we're learning about this company, or, you start to see a little bit of the buzz that's coming out that are like quote unquote rumors, and you're waiting for those rumors to become validated. Like, for example, if you look at Apple, the company, a lot of times you hear a ton of rumors that are out on Apple. Does Apple comment on rumors? No, they don't. When they ask Tim Cook for comment, or anybody that's PR related from Apple to respond, you don't get anything. But it's when there's actual news related items in which that it actually is headline breaking or press releasing, I guess, so to speak, then you typically see Apple comment, and essentially they have no problem in doing so. That's the news that's broken, or that's when the news breaks. So essentially it's like when you're in there, and this is where it comes to putting together your thesis as well as your conviction, and being able to look down the road and seeing exactly what's coming down the pipeline. So for example, here's a rumor. Apple is looking at releasing glasses. That's a rumor because of the fact that it hasn't made news yet. Another thing that Apple's looking at doing is its passports. Now, we've heard Tim Cook talk about it, but yet we haven't really fully seen it yet as it pertains to passports for health, or also for the digital wallets. We heard about it in WWDC, but it still hasn't yet come to fruition yet. When we think about it as it pertains to what they're going to do in travel, those are also rumors, but yet at the same token, they haven't been substantiated yet because we haven't seen it yet. Another thing that we haven't seen yet is the car. We hear a lot of rumors about it, but yet we haven't seen it yet. So when you finally see these things, then it becomes news. I'll give you another example. A rumor that came out, well, slight rumor, that the fact that Apple is joining up with quote unquote Roku to literally put its Apple TV Plus button on the Roku remote. Okay, that's slight rumor, slight news, but yet at the same token, who hasn't commented yet? Apple. But soon when we start to see it release, and when we start seeing that how that has impacts on, say, for example, their revenues, or that the fact that people are willing to buy that versus buying other streaming devices out there, then now that's a news related item that you can now cash out on.
Okay.
Yep.
question.
That's the
Okay,
other thing where it's like, for example, if you look at a stock split, or if you hear about a stock split, or if you hear about a merger acquisition that's coming around the pipeline, or that you know that's going to close, it's not news yet until the merger acquisition officially closes.
So we had health, in the top 3 for sectors today.
Yep.
And cousin would like to know, what are your thoughts on healthcare stocks for the second half of the year? How does health?
It kind of like it's there, but it's just like, okay, hey, it's not the clear defining winner. I mean, every now and then you get that. Like, for example, during COVID, you had a ton of healthcare winners out there, and respectfully so. And I think that you're going to see that going forward, for a few more months. But when we look at overall winner, I don't think that that's going to be it. What you saw this year was you saw financials, materials, industrials, and consumer staples and utilities and energy, especially energy. They were all significantly up. Now that we've gotten to that point, now it's just a matter of like, okay, hey, well, where are we going from here? Like, where do we go from here? Well, you have to look at it like this. If you were looking at your money and saying, okay, hey, well, where is it that I want my money to be as it pertains to who could potentially really be what the market wants to talk about, who they are talking about, and who stands to benefit during the seasonality based upon looking at revenues, I would say this. Here's a good way to look at it. Go pull up I would say this. You could look at any index ETF and go pull up the top 5. And now that you pulled up the top 5, if you can, go to Zacks. And Zacks does a beautiful job of giving you key company metrics, like, for example, their earnings over a period of time. And what you'll start to notice is when you pay attention, you'll start to see moments in where you see spikes in their revenue, where their revenues are stronger by quarter, and it's on a consistent basis. That gives you an idea as it pertains to what that seasonality looks like. So, for example, since I've been talking a lot about Apple's quarter that's coming up is probably not going to be as strong as quarter. Now, it's not to say that they're not going to sell stuff, that they're not going to make money. They are. But their strongest quarter is typically coming during the fall and also right after the holiday season. So those January earnings that we typically receive, alongside with something that we receive at the end, like close to the end of the year, those are the quarters in which the Apple tends to shine brightest. Now, the quarters that follow after it, the 2 quarters that follow after, so like, for example, Q2, Q3, they may not be that strong. But Q4, Q1, or Q3, Q4 could be the strongest for Apple, and then Q1, Q2 are its weakest. When you start looking at those things, then you start to say, all right, well, now I can spot the seasonality, and do that for the top 5, because then it can start telling you the sectors and where they're starting to perform. And investors, here's the thing about it. They don't just invest within that quarter. 9 times out of 10, they already know what the seasonality is. So 9 times out of 10, they're already there, or they're getting there.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, we're going to take a break from the questions. We're going to turn to our pick list. Okay. And for this second half, I'm going to say the ticker.
Okay.
And I'm going to say the ticker, and either I'm going to say a risk or reward, and you have to give one for that one. Okay. Understand? Straightforward. All right, here we go.
Say that one more time. Can we get the rules again?
Yeah. So I'm going to go through our pick list, right? Okay. I'm going to say the ticker, and I'm going to say either risk or I'm going to say reward. And then you give one risk or one reward, depending on which word I say.
Okay.
All right, here we go. This is lightning round, okay?
Okay.
Here we go. First one, Nike, risk.
Underperforming during the Olympics.
FTNT, reward.
Continuous need for cybersecurity.
MasterCard, reward.
People shop, economic rebound.
XPO, risk.
Ooh, cuts in spending. So capital expenses, CapEx spending decreases.
Okay, NVIDIA, risk.
ARM deal blows up.
Netflix reward.
Subscriber growth increases.
JP Morgan risk.
Square.
Disney reward.
Economic rebound, people going to their theme parks.
Home Depot risk.
Lumber.
As in a shortage.
Lumber shortage, as well as those costs, the cost of lumber starts to drop.
Okay. Target. I was supposed to do the ticker symbol, my bad.
Okay.
TGNT.
TGT.
TG, sorry. Looking at FTNT. TGT reward.
Rebound. Consumer spending is good, and ultimately the consumer loves to keep shopping.
V risk.
Oof. Risk for V would probably be the same as MasterCard's, but as a bonus, but essentially consumer spending slows.
Okay, reward for ticker symbol SNPS.
FN what?
S.
Oh.
Sorry.
As in synopsis. So you said risk?
Mm-hmm.
Investors still don't understand.
I think I said risk. I could have said reward. I don't remember. Anyway, moving on. DOG reward.
Stronger need for cybersecurity and cloud infrastructure and adoption.
Okay. Risk for ticker symbol NSFT.
Risk. Xbox sales cannot get back, and then ultimately also, it's just really Xbox sales and cloud infrastructure, cloud spending slows.
All right. Reward for ticker symbol BA.
FAA approval.
All right. Okay. Now those are all the ones. I didn't go over Apple because we've talked about Apple. Okay, so now I'm getting into the ones that were read for today.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Ticker symbol ADBE. What is a reward?
People go back out shopping, and essentially it's Magento platform that it acquired starts to pick up more traction due to the fact that people are out there spending.
Okay.
And
Now,
going for events.
Okay. For ticker symbol TSLA, let's go with the risk.
What's the ticker symbol again?
Ticker symbol TSLA.
Currently, are we talking about I guess we'll go with short term, and I guess I'll give you a bonus for long term. Short term, essentially delivery. Deliveries are underperforming. They don't beat the Wall Street bullish number or its whisper number. The other risk for it is also in the sense of FSD not ever getting there, and on top of that, not being able to get Giga Berlin and Giga Texas online.
Alrighty. Ticker symbol DOCU reward.
Continues to keep kicking the crap out of Adobe Sign, and people will start using more signatures for its platform, and then on top of that, starting to go even further into other things like other legal contracts.
Okay. Ticker symbol AMD risk.
Ooh, risk. Essentially, another chip supply shortage, or say, for example, after the deal with Xilinx closes, then essentially it's like things just don't pan out with the technology, and Intel finds a way to literally, innovate faster.
Okay. Ticker symbol SQ reward.
More adoption towards digital wallet, and on top of that, people going back, businesses opening up, states opening up, and using Square's POS system, along with opening up business checking accounts on their service.
Ticker symbol SE reward.
Ooh, gaming increases in China, as well as starts to make its way overseas, along with esports coming back.
Ticker symbol T, DOC, and risk.
Risk. People stop wanting to do virtual meetings with doctors, but yet at the same token going to actual physical doctors, or essentially it's competitors coming into the space and making more noise, which will ultimately be louder than teledoc.
Ticker symbol ZS, reward.
Again, more infrastructure spending towards cloud security, along with like the other players. And of course, if we start getting more and more hacks or more and more liabilities, then that's advantage Zscaler.
Ticker symbol TSM, risk.
Risk for TSM, essentially China being one of them. And at the same token, essentially chip shortage subsides, and then ultimately we have to do a rebalancing as it pertains to what we expect from cost. So that's a pretty weak risk. But ultimately, you know, other players wanting to jump ship and go to its competitors, like, for example, Samsung or somebody else.
Okay, Twilio, let's go with reward.
More need for online customer service support, which is ultimately what Twilio's main business model is. And honestly, it increases by also using chatbots.
Say that again.
With also including its growing adoption of chatbots.
Okay, Baba, let's go with the reward.
Essentially, China consumer spending, along with the rest of Asia, increases, and then on top of that, essentially China starts to also release some of its grip on its antitrust rhetoric.
Okay, ticker symbol LRCX, and let's go with the risk.
Risk valuations are a little bit stretched. Also, the fact that other investors start to look at Lam Research as not so attractive, given that its hefty valuation is pretty high, and then they start looking towards other players that are sexier and also are more attractive as it pertains to market cap and valuation, a la AMD, NVIDIA, and unfortunately even Intel.
All right, let's go with ticker symbol CRSP, and let's go with a risk.
Risk, the fact that you have Intelia and a few other companies that are doing some of the same things and making significant inroads within, say, for example, gene editing technology that can ultimately eclipse CRISPR's shine, along with them running out of capital and not being able to essentially bring in the revenue accordingly to say, all right, well, we got legitimate business here.
Okay, and for our final single stop on the list, what is a reward for ticker symbol ROKU?
What's a reward? Apple. I'm just kidding, but not really. The fact that they're getting into the content acquisition space. So if they start getting more into content acquisition, that could actually mean that those, you know, everything that I said earlier can start giving some significant legs to Roku. I think that they had acquired Quibi, but, you know, really Quibi failed. So that's neither here nor there. But honestly, if they start getting into a space where they start having more content that they actually start acquiring, then honestly, I think that that gives Roku some significant numbers. And some significant eyeballs where some of those other companies like Google, Amazon, Apple, and other players like Netflix have to start putting more respect on its name.
Okay. Someone wanted to know, are you going to start a hedge fund?
Don't know yet. Right now, I'm just taking the time off. As for those that don't know, as of June 15th, I'm no longer managing partner of venture capital firm that I created. And so now I just want to kind of like just take the time back and do some of the things that are passion projects to me, like, for example, the Come Up series, and spend more time there, along with spend more time with my family and, you know, just have some more personal time and figure that out. I've always had a lot on my plate that I was juggling, that though it didn't seem like I did, but I didn't, but I did. Mm-hmm. So I'm not in no rush, but you never know. It may be that, you know, you can see, you know, a hedge fund or maybe even a fund that acts like ARK. You never know.
You never know. All right. Okay. Let's see. We got a question about Xi Jinping said gaining control of Taiwan was the key mission. What's the impact on chips and maybe possible U.S. war?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Xi Jinping said gaining control of Taiwan was their key mission. So what is the impact on chips and maybe possible U.S. war?
I think that they were kind of like just bringing it in under one China when they were doing all that, pretty much rounding up and regulation. Mm-hmm. Taiwan produces a lot of innovation comes out of Taiwan. It's not just Taiwanese, not just TSM, but there's many other companies out there that are within Taiwan that honestly that China now has access to. So TSMC is just one of the companies. Honestly, it's kind of like a wait and see approach because honestly, nobody has a crystal ball on this one, but honestly, it can put some pressure on some of the other like countries that do business with China. But then at the same token, you don't want to push it too far because sometimes in pushing people too far or pushing countries so far, and if they have the money to spend, then honestly, they can turn around and ultimately make their own personal investments, which ultimately takes business away from those same companies that you try to wrap your arms around. Mm. It's a global economy. So,
there was a question, you said global, and I'm trying to find it. A question about the global minimum tax, the likelihood that it comes to life.
It's definitely going to come to life. And I think that honestly, here's the thing to know about like a lot of these corporations, they don't fear taxes. They do not. They fear more so regulation in which that puts, like, say, for example, a fence around what is it that they can do versus paying a tax or paying a toll on their business. That's just nothing but maybe a bee sting or maybe even just a simple speed bump. But outside of that, it's like, like anybody else, you learn how to drive around speed bumps or how to drive through speed bumps and still get to your destination. So honestly, I don't think that companies really care about that, even if they're doing so much business. And here's the other thing. When you put so much taxes on that, and when everybody's placing tax around, then that can also mean that they can raise the price as it pertains to what is it that they charge for. So the question is that, somehow, some way they're going to adjust the price. So that way, essentially, it's like they're not really getting hit at all.
Okay. We have a question about my stock pick, SMH. Okay. As you know, we still have some holdings that have not reached their full potential 52-week high and all that. Yep. So the question is, what do you see for SMH as far as it running this summer?
I see that as a huge opportunity for chips to definitely go for a run, especially since we're starting to see the commentary that, especially when you looked at Micron's earnings, we're starting to see that a lot of the supply chain shortages are starting to subside for some people. Shout outs to Ford. That's unfortunate that essentially that you're going to have to cut all of your, say, for example, expectations this year for your deliveries and production due to, supply chain or chips shortage. That's very unfortunate. But I'm sure that you'll bounce back and come back strong. And then I think that, really, you're going to see a huge bump going forth because I still believe that there's more room to run, especially for companies like NVIDIA, AMD. I'm even going to add Intel in there because even though that they're slow on innovation, they're still expected to sell chips. I still believe that there's going to be upside for Micron. I think that this is just going to be a simple, what we saw today was just a simple pullback in Micron. But honestly, I think that there's still strong upside there. I think your ASMLs, your applied materials, and your Lam researches, there will still be something for them. But I think that honestly, they're just going to go with the rest of the sector or the rest of that chip area. But moving forward, I think that, chips is definitely going to heat up as we go into the summer. So.
All right. Who has the lead in the genomics sector?
Currently, if we're looking at it, I think that honestly, currently right now, I'll give it to CRISPR for now. But at the same token, it's like, leadership and leads, they fluctuate, especially when you're talking about research and everything else. So honestly, it's kind of like a wait and see approach on that one as well, because, there's never really ever still a clear defining winner in that space. So, yeah.
All right, here's a question. Someone wanted to know, they said, can Mark expand a little more on the convo from yesterday, Starlink, where Tesla's cars and smart cities, or about Tesla's cars and smart cities?
Yeah, so I was saying that with Starlink and the fact that you're able to bring, pretty much broadband access or pretty much high speed internet from pretty much practically almost anywhere, as long as they can look up to the sky, then essentially you have access to essentially data, where data becomes a lot more easier transferable to items, especially vehicles. So essentially, if Starlink and Tesla had got together, then imagine the neural network where cars and other vehicle manufacturers probably they would have to all come together under one system to really be able to build such a neural network where they all talk to each other, or just building robo-taxi networks that talk to each other, and that requires data. And with that, they would also have to talk with also, for example, the smart asphalt, also like traffic signs, looking into other things as it pertains to being able to underground for underground travel, like for example with the Boring Company and what they're doing with their stations. So when you put together such a network where so many ubiquitous devices are all connecting and talking to each other, that requires data, and that means that that's an advantage for Starlink.
Okay. Where did this question go?
Was this earlier?
No, I wrote that one down. No, there was a question about the impact of the 650 banks accepting crypto.
Congratulations in your journey to stay relevant.
All right.
Was that too shady?
No, it's never too shady for Thursday, for a Hot Take Thursday. Okay, so we have about 8 minutes. I think what you need about 5 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me try and get in one other question. Here's a question. Rotations you see from Q3 to Q4 in surprising sectors that we should watch.
I want everybody to do this as some homework. I want you to look at the S&P 500, and I want you to look at it from, if you take that example that I gave you earlier about looking at which companies, the top 5 within those sectors, have their best quarters and when, that will kind of give you some good examples, because you said like it's seasonality and it's now coming back into full effect. What I will say though is look at the S&P 500 and look at the weighting of those different sectors. Like that should tell you a lot. Like, for example, you saw quite a bit of companies or quite a bit of sectors that had to come together and had to go positive, and for the S&P 500 to be sitting at 4,300 and some change. So when those sectors start to take a break, I'll just give it to you. If you put together 2 sectors or 3 sectors, they equals these other sectors that haven't been getting as much shine represent probably half of the entire S&P 500. Like close to 50% of the entire S&P 500. So if you're saying that, then, and if we knew that there was a rotation happening because you already saw it taking place, and it's going to continue to keep happening as we start getting more of the good news. So far, we had good news was bad news, and bad news was, bad news was good news last year. So now we're at good news is bad news. And I think we're going to get ready to go into that transition where good news is actually good news. And for that to be said, I mean, you look at everything else in which that we see of things in which that have done so well this year. Now you have to look at your portfolio and say, is the best still yet to come, or are their best days behind them in what they've done over the past 6 months? And can they propel and consistently can they actually give validation to that value, some of those rich valuations that they're starting to build? And if that's the case, then great. Like, for example, if we look at this infrastructure bill, and God knows what's going to actually be in it and what the real number is going to be in the end. But if we think about it, we have to take into consideration that the fact that a lot of these things in which that we already know are already priced in for, like, for example, industrials, financials, materials, because if you see that inflation subsiding, then there goes materials as well as utilities. If, say, for example, the price of oil starts to drop, then there goes energy, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So it starts to become like a domino effect. And then investors are always going to be looking for growth and return. So where are they going to turn to? Therein, it makes it so much easier.
Okay. And one final question before we transition to the last question. that's been put on hold. Robinhood has 18 million accounts and $80 billion $80 billion for assets under management. Is this an acquisition target? And if so, who would be in the best position to acquire Robinhood, in your opinion?
Any of the financial institutions would, but I think that these are the types of things that you start to hear as we get closer towards a company going public. More information starts to come out and it starts to become more publicly accessible because people start reading those S1 filings and everything else, and it starts to come to light. And so now it's like you're going to start seeing more of these things as you get closer towards its IPO day.
All right. So now we are going to transition to the final question about the breaking up of big tech. How are we supposed to compete with China if that is a result, or if that happens?
Short answer, we won't. Short answer, we won't. And it's like, the thing is like, I'm gonna get a little bit real with folks, and honestly, that's like, I'm always gonna keep it funky with you. America is not top when it comes to technology. We haven't been for quite some time. And the reason why we haven't is because of the fact that it's not even because of the regulatory stuff, but that plays a huge role. But it's just the fact is that we're not making the type of investment that we should be, that other countries like China are. China's the type of country where it's like, think about it. Most of its businesses that have gone on to be very successful, China has had a hand in putting a lot of dollars in investment, towards making these companies successful. Now, it's like, now that they're successful, they open up doors for new companies and they accept innovation very, very, very much so well. It's not about, okay, hey, like my privacy and everything else, though that they do slightly care about that, but yet at the same token, not as much as we do. They also don't belittle education and knowledge, and also smart folks in whom which that are smart. They embrace it and they welcome it. And then on top of that, they share it. That's always been kind of like their model of entry, where it's like we share technology. Hence the reason why they look at it from us, where it's like we say that they're stealing a lot of our secrets and everything else, or our IP, but yet they look at it from their standpoint in the sense of you're just sharing it with us, and ultimately there's more than enough to go around. I think that when it comes to us, is that we focus more so on returning value to shareholders, and that's just us being capitalistic, and there's nothing wrong with making a buck. I mean, that's what Andrew Jackson did when he started the New York Stock Exchange. But I think that we got to start looking at it from the standpoint of, with all this regulation and with all this deterrence and all this negativity towards the same companies in which that have literally inspired a lot of those companies that sit overseas, we're now at the point where we're saying, okay, hey, you've gotten too big, you've gotten too successful, but yet we encourage you to become successful. You can't have it both ways and say that you want people to literally create innovative companies and literally do great things that were like pretty much modern art, but yet at the same token, turn around and say, okay, hey, now you've gotten so big, you've gotten so successful, we don't like you anymore. It just doesn't work like that. Facebook acquired a company that the United States government allowed for it to go through. Mm-hmm. And now it's like to say that you're going to try to roll that back, to say, okay, hey, well, we take that back. That's idiotic. It's asinine. And the other part is that, we're not making the investments because of the fact that we're getting so caught up in political theater, versus essentially saying, okay, hey, these things need to happen. We want to be dominant. And America has always looked at itself as dominant in specific areas. Industrial, infrastructure, well, we're no longer dominant in that. Then on top of that, military. Well, we're still somewhat dominant there because of the fact that we police a lot of times the world. But yet at the same token, we're getting to a world where it's like, even then, it's like the technology in which that is coming forth, where you talk about autonomy and everything else. Mm-hmm. You've got countries like Saudi Arabia that made an AI robot a citizen. We haven't done that here. We're so afraid of it. We are like, it's like the human mentality is so eager to hate what it doesn't understand. And I think that we have to, at this point in time, we have to start looking at it from the standpoint of competition, in the sense of, okay, hey, if we're really going to say that we're the most innovative place, then honestly, we have to, then now it's like we have to have that real conversation. If you think about like how many computer science graduates graduate every year from college, but yet we still have over 9 million jobs that go unfilled. And yet we still have folks that are coming out of computer science schools that are unemployed. And yet we're having no problem in hiring folks that are coming overseas. I mean, think about it. Once upon a time, Harvard, MIT, those schools were considered the #1 schools in the world for computer science and engineering. That is no longer the case. New Delhi is actually, the school in New Delhi is actually the top computer science engineering school in the world. And think about how many engineers that they put through. Think about think about all the things in which that they're inviting, in which that, okay, hey, that they're pushing their next generation through, and understand the next generation understands that essentially that these things have to be built. So I think that if we're going to say that, hey, can America become the leader when it comes to technology? It's not going to happen off of the backs of Apple. I tell you that. Apple's already chosen its fate to become the top company as it pertains to monetary value, but not when it comes to innovation anymore. Mm-hmm. When we look at Google, look at how once upon a time during the age of Larry Page, Sergey Brin, and Eric Schmidt as CEO, look at the innovation that moved through, and look at it now. Don't get me wrong, Sundar Pichai is an amazing CEO, but yet at the same token, look at how much innovation has slowed at Google. Look at what's taking place at Microsoft. Microsoft is starting to pick it up, but Microsoft can't carry the United States by itself. Look at what Amazon started to do with Amazon Go stores and its technology, but yet people were like, oh, well, what about my privacy and everything else? Look at the regulation. We're so worried about, okay, hey, well, Amazon doesn't do this, Amazon doesn't do that. But yeah, at the same token, that's the price of innovation. With innovation, you go through pain points. Look at Tesla. Look at how much we've scrutinized one specific company that has literally forced every single automobile manufacturer to come outside and literally have the conversation. And yet, at the same token, it's one of the most highly scrutinized companies for doing what it has done to literally say, okay, hey, if climate change is real, we're forcing every single auto manufacturer to come out there and compete with us, quote unquote, but we're really taking gas cars off of the road. But yet you see all these other countries, China literally says, hey, you can't have a car that's internal combustion engine on the road after 2030. You can't sell it. Canada has just banned the fact that, okay, hey, by 2035, you cannot sell an internal combustion engine in the country. So it's just those types of things in which that we say, all right, well, if we truly embrace innovation, then we must embrace it and accept it. But if we don't, then we also have to take in consideration that if you don't want to be the leader, then admit that you are willing to take the backside or the back seat to somebody else having the driver's seat. And I think that that's what America has done. We've taken the back seat to other countries. Now, it's not to say that essentially that we can't get there. It's not to say that these things can't be done and that we can't make a turnaround. But what I guarantee you is we're not going to win this innovation war by having a knife fight against other countries. We're going to win this war on innovation when it comes to actually accepting it, truly embracing it, getting our kids into these spaces, into STEM technology, and getting them to understand and learn and say, okay, hey, you help go out there and build the future. And then on top of that, it's like, hey, we don't belittle it. We don't belittle smart people. We don't belittle geeks. We don't belittle nerds. If anything, we embrace them. Once upon a time, they were the heroes. Now, essentially, they're the laughing stock of the country.
Well, with that, it's 6:03.
Ooh, I went over by 3 minutes. I'm sorry.
I wasn't gonna stop you. Let you go. Well, thank you, Mark.
Not a problem.
For participating in the game and also answering all the cousins' questions about the news and other things and ting. So that's a wrap. It's time to shut it on down.
Yo, so thank you so much, Jolyn, for doing that game. That was so much fun. I like those type of games where it's like you got me thinking on my feet. Here for it. No, I'm gonna get you back in the Matrix this year.
Whatever.
But thank each and every single one of you for sitting back. I know that you're probably gonna go back and do a playback of all the stuff that was talked about today, especially me going through all those companies and just giving you my initial thoughts and looking at the risk or rewards to those. Those are dope. And on top of that, I hope that some of the stuff that we discussed in this conversation really brings light towards whatever you're doing to put together your conviction and thesis. And as it pertains to you building your investment portfolio, which AKA leads to your generational wealth plan. Until next time, I am Mark Monroe.
And I'm Jolyn GC in the place to be.
And this has been Hot Take Thursday. Keep learning, keep researching, keep studying, because the more you learn, the more you earn, and be kind. Because of course, don't belittle people in whom that are smart, embrace them. But at the same token, if you're smart, don't be a jerk, be helpful.
Exactly.
Peace, y'all.